Let me ask you something. Is there such a thing as digging too deep? Can you look so closely at something that all meaning falls away and you're left with just pure conjecture from someone who is clearly BSing their ass off? Well, I say nay. Meaning is what you make of it. Read between the lines until your eyes go crossed. Give me a kiddie pool worth of depth and I'll take you to the frickin' Marianas Trench. Don't believe me? Well, let's take a look at an anime from this season, and you can answer for yourself whether or not one can truly overanalyze a piece of media. And what better anime to test this with than My Girlfriend is Shobitch. Not my girlfriend, mind you. I would never color something like that, because she doesn't exist. Anyway, so I'm gonna take a slightly different approach to this analysis than I did with my last video that was sort of this ilk. I'm gonna break apart specifically the opening in terms of a few broad categories that could be applied to just about any visual medium. Those being the overall theme, use of colors, and symbolism. Things that pretty much every OP has in spades and typically can be found at a much higher rate than a particular episode or scene. So, let's get right into it. Also, really quick note to start with, it's important you know another translation for the title is My Girlfriend is a Faithful Virgin Bitch. Just keep that in mind as we start with a pretty innocuous shot of the titular girlfriend walking over to a drawer and looking at a pair of fancy white underwear, and some... We're just off to the races already, huh? Okay. These initial shots, while a little on the nose, are actually highlighting a very common theme of the series, and one that'll continue to show up in this opening. That being Kosaka's desire to be a good girlfriend, but at the same time not really having any first-hand experience when it comes to that. We have this idea literally shoved into our faces with the following shot, and, well, yeah, as you can see, the entire frame is enveloped in white as the title appears along with cherry blossom petals. We then see this aforementioned inexperience but desire to learn reinforced by her choice of literature. We're shown her reading what is likely a birds and the bees kind of book surrounded by some clear sexual imagery and people who quite clearly don't matter. And these sexual themes will continue to show up throughout the opening in sometimes subtle but also very overt ways. That being said, 1, we'll touch more on those when we get to symbolism, and 2, wow, it's gonna take a miracle and a half for this video to be fully monetized. Anyway, this theme of heavy sexual overtones does a good job of prepping you for the series at large, because yeah, the humor isn't incredibly subtle either. I mean, come on, were you really expecting Shakespearean levels of wit from this?
篠崎さん。
いやいや、さすがに。
Yeah, I thought not. This sequence, though, is actually a perfect jumping off point to our second area of analysis, color. Because this shot of her reading is the first good look we get at her outfit of choice in the OP. Also, I am going to mostly be focusing on her when it comes to this section, as she is the titular girlfriend, but also because analyzing every shade and tint in this opening would probably cost you your patience and me my sanity. Assuming there's any left to lose. But her outfit here doesn't seem to be anything too special. It's a gray dress. There may be a better word for it. I'm just really bad when it comes to, well, any kind of fashion. So it's a good thing I chose to focus on color. Definitely no self-serving bias there. So what does it tell us? Well, it being gray actually fits perfectly with both Kosaka's character design and personality, because the color is often associated with a lack of emotion, robotic if you will, a vibe she tends to give off, especially when you look at her eyes. Gray, though, also carries with it a sense of dirtiness. This is likely in the physical sense, but when paired with this kind of series, I think it's a clear reference instead to the more perverted perception of the word. There could also be an unintentional consequence of this color choice, though, on the part of Kosaka. From a psychological standpoint, gray tends to evoke unsettling feelings, and just in general makes us anxious. And from what little I've seen of this show, Kosaka does tend to unintentionally put our main character into situations that leave him feeling uneasy to say the least. So this large presence of gray in both her outfit and character are apt for the series. That being said, I still do want to discuss the other colors that are present in her ensemble. The color white, for example, is shown peeking out from her dress, and it's a reminder that she is still quite innocent despite talking a dirty game. It's still there even if she does her best to cover it up. This is also likely why her panties and bra are white. You know, in case you forgot. But aside from just her clothes, we also see she's carrying a red purse with her and has a green gem on both her necklace and the back of her dress. So let's break these down. The presence of red most likely signifies desire, passion, and love in general. Now, it could also indicate things like aggression or blood rituals, but I think the former analysis is the safer bet, especially once we learn she's actually out on a date with her boyfriend in this scene. Still, might want to keep an eye out just to be safe. It's also significant that the color is a part of her purse, because it tells us while these feelings are new, there's still something that she always carries with her, which at this point in the relationship, it's probably a good thing that they aren't permanent. And as for the green, well, it's definitely the smallest component of her outfit, but that doesn't mean it's any less important. In this instance, green probably refers to the idea of growth that the color is often associated with, which makes sense as to why it's such a small part of her outfit. Her relationship is new, it's still growing. I actually wouldn't be surprised then if we see green being included more and more in her design as the series goes on. Also, green can represent fertility, so make of that what you will. Now that we've gotten all of the color theory done with, let's move on to symbolism. Glorious, glorious symbolism. And we might as well pick up with this sequence. We can see Kosaka is looking at a reflection in the window display, probably checking to make sure she looks alright before meeting up with her boyfriend. This is confirmed in the following shots with her brushing her hands through her hair as she turns to greet him. Now this next shot we see actually holds a good amount of significance despite its simplistic composition. Because if we back up and look again at this part where she sees her reflection, you'll notice these two rings of light drawing our attention to her breasts. But the fact that the ring of light also appears in her reflection is symbolic of the fact that there is a part of her that may be a little concerned. In other words, we're being shown what her subconscious is thinking. There is probably some piece of her that's concerned our MC is only interested in her for her looks. An idea that is then strengthened when paired with this shot I mentioned earlier. As she's turning, we're shown only her chest. It literally takes up the majority of the frame, and she likely thinks this is the first thing her boyfriend will see too. The following shots of her eyes, though, suggest that this isn't the case. Now this next sequence, this is where things start to get interesting. It serves primarily as an introduction to some of our supporting cast, the main character's childhood friend and little sister, archetypes not uncommon for a show of this ilk. But I want you to take a closer look at the architecture present in these shots. These columns are clearly not what you'd expect to find in everyday life in Japan, and bear a strong resemblance to the pillars that were commonly used in ancient Greek and Roman temples. These sites were meant for worshipping the gods of those ancient times, and it often was said that they would dwell in them, and based on the angle that's shown to us, it looks as though our main character is filling that role. Which kind of weirdly makes sense, because the idea of a harem is actually present in some of those old legends, where Zeus and many other gods were known to screw anything with at least 2 legs. So even if it is being used to comedic effect in this series, it's still cool to see this extra layer of depth. There isn't a whole lot to dissect in these next couple shots. One thing you could pull out may be that the background here appears to look like it's cut out, almost out of a pop-up book. This, accompanied by the several side characters cheering on the couple, suggests this whole thing could wind up having a storybook romance kind of feel, like a nice bedtime story, just with a lot more dicks. Geez, that kind of gives a whole new meaning to the term pop-up book now that I think about it. Well, speaking of phallic imagery being shoved into your face, that's what we get a lot of in these following shots. Yeah, they're really not trying to be subtle here. We see bananas followed by cherries before switching up gears and giving the women attention with some cats. I'm not entirely sure what star pupil girl here represents, but it could be symbolic of being overly enthusiastic during this time in our lives, especially when it comes to the opposite sex. But if that symbolism wasn't blatant enough for you, we then see our titular Shobitch on top of a banana before getting to what you've probably all been waiting for, the money shot. And I promise, we will break this bit down in just a moment, but it's important first to look at what follows because it provides some crucial context. We see most of the female cast splayed out naked on top of some sort of dessert-style dish. And yes, to the untrained eye, this might look like nothing more than tasteless fan service. I don't blame you for seeing it that way, because I initially did as well. But then I realized, this shot actually draws some convincing parallels to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, if you don't know what that is, back in the 1940s, famed psychologist Abraham Maslow basically proposed that everybody has these levels in their lives, sort of like a priority list, and you can't fully realize any of these higher levels until you have the lower ones sorted. So looking back to our shot, the girls are all resting on top of what? Food. And physiological needs are at the very base of this pyramid Maslow designed. You can't focus on anything else in your life if your biological needs aren't in order. This is also why the girls are distinctly on top of the food rather than baked into it. And so they then quite clearly fill up the next two parts of Maslow's pyramid, those being safety and love/belonging. Safety because those he cares about most are there, and said presence provides some innate sense of security. And love because, well, again, we can clearly see his girlfriend is elevated even higher than anyone else on the dish. Which again, makes sense because having a healthy family life and healthy relationships in general can often help when it comes to your significant other. That's not to say his friends and family present don't also contribute to that love factor, but clearly she's the focus, let's not kid ourselves. And so having explained all that, we can now backtrack to this shot and this mysterious white substance that is going on top of even Kosaka, our Shobitch. What is it? Frosting or whipped cream maybe? Well, let's refer back to our chart. According to Maslow, the thing that follows love/belonging is self-esteem. The idea that healthy bonds with friends and family is key to your own confidence as a person. And now it all makes sense. It's self-esteem cream! Jesus Christ, I think that's the worst thing I've ever said. Only when he finally musters up the courage to ask her out has he finally started to find his own worth as a person. I could go into greater detail with more shots, but I honestly don't think anything is going to top that. So instead, I'll just leave you with this bit here and have you think to yourselves about how this is the most well-animated bit of the opening. Just read into that as much as you want. Take it all in. But that has been a breakdown of My Girlfriend is Shobitch. Have I proven my point? What was my point again? Oh right, anything can be deep when you lack depth perception, if you know what to look for. But that is just my analysis, and feel free to share your thoughts. Have I gone off the deep end? Could this video be considered torture in a court of law? Is there anything you want to see me analyze to all hell? Whatever your thoughts are, you can let me know down below. Thanks for watching, and an especially big thanks goes out to my awesome patrons PenguinPandaZero, OverjoyedSoup, MVPino, James Morton, and everyone else for generously supporting me. If you would like to support me, you can click on the right to visit my Patreon page, you can click the left to subscribe, in the middle to watch more of my content. Feel free to leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Thank you once again for your patience. This took a lot longer to put together than I had originally thought, and I'm sorry. Stay awesome, and I'll see you next time.